All right, so we are asked the question to determine the graph of f of x, where f of x equals negative 10x minus 24 over 2x plus 6. Now I'm going to show you two different methods, and you can decide which one you like better, but please recognize that both methods can be useful depending on the type of question you're given, because you're not always going to given a simple question like this. Now let's start with method one. Now method one is where we are going to put it into the form of f of x equals a over x minus h plus k. This is useful because remember that h tells us the location of our vertical asymptote. K tells us the location of our horizontal asymptote. Okay, so let's begin. How do I do this? Well, if you have a form where you have a binomial over a binomial, you can simply long divide this to get it into the form of this. So let's start the long division process. 2x plus 6 dividing negative 10x minus 24. So how do I make 2x turn into negative 10x? I multiply it by negative 5. Negative 5 times 2x gives me negative 10x. Negative 5 times positive 6 gives me negative 30. I'm going to subtract these two equations. Negative 10x minus negative 10x gives me 0. Negative 24 minus negative 30 gives me positive 6. Now I can put this into the form where we have our remainder dividing our original denominator, adding our resultant. So f of x can be put into the form of 6 over our original denominator, 2x plus 6, minus 5. Now, some people might jump the gun here and say there was a shift 6 units to the left, but this coefficient is not 1, so we need to factor out this 2, and we also want it to be completely alone here. We only want a vertical stretch. So how do I do that? Well, I'm going to factor out that 2. And I'm going to get 6 over 2x plus 3, so I factored out the 2, minus 5. Now recognize 6 divided by 2, we can simplify that to just get a vertical stretch on the top of 3, x plus 3 minus 5. So now we already know where our horizontal asymptote is. It's at y equals negative 5. We already know where our vertical asymptote is, at x equals negative 3. And we know that there is a vertical stretch by a factor of 3. So we can already start roughly graphing this thing. We already know that at negative 5, let's put it right here, we have a horizontal asymptote. At negative 3, we have a vertical asymptote. So there is no reflections here, so we know that we are going to have our graph on this side and on the bottom here. A few things I might find is my x-intercept and my y-intercept. So let's find my x-intercept really quickly. That is when y equals 0. So to begin, I simply place 0 equaling x, 0 equaling y. So 0 equals 3 over x plus 3 minus 5. Start solving for x. So I'm going to add 5 to both sides. And that gives me 5 equals 3 over x plus 3. I'm going to multiply by both sides by x plus 3. And that's going to allow me to cancel these guys out. I'm going to distribute 5 into the brackets. So 5x plus 15 equals 3. And now you can simply start solving for x. Minus 15 minus 15. That gives me 5x equals negative 12. And then divide 5. And you are going to get x to be negative 12 over 5. And that roughly equals negative 2.4. Okay? So our x-intercept is negative 2.4 and 0. Okay? So we can roughly plot that. If we put 2 or negative 2 around here, negative 2.4 will be around here. Now let's quickly find our y-intercept. That's when x equals 0 in this case. So let's plug that in. F at 0 gives me 3 over 0 plus 3 minus 5. 3 divided by 3 gives me 1. Minus 5 will give me negative 4. So this is negative, or 0 and negative 4, which makes sense. We'll have it here, and our graph will look something like this. Now on this side, you can maybe find 2 points, but we're just doing a rough sketch, so it'll look something like that. Now on to method 2. So method 2, we have to apply a few of our cases. So we learned about the 3 cases in order to figure out our horizontal asymptote. Let's start off by finding our vertical asymptote. So vertical asymptote is tied to our non-permissible value. Remember, they're related, they're not the exact same. So here we have a restriction where 2x plus 6 cannot equal 0 because you cannot divide by 0. So let's find our non-permissible value. We're going to minus 6, and then we're going to divide by 2. And that gives me x cannot equal negative 3. Recognize this is the non-permissible value, which is tied to the asymptote x equals negative 3. Now this is the equation of vertical asymptote. So we already know where our vertical asymptote is. Now, how do I find my horizontal asymptote? You have to use the 3 cases. In this case, your numerator's largest exponent is the same as the denominator's largest exponent, which is both 1. So you're going to take the leading coefficients and find that fraction. So y equals negative 10 over 2, which equals negative 5. So your horizontal asymptote is found at y equaling negative 5. And this is your horizontal asymptote. Kind of redundant, but that's okay. So negative 5 here. And there's your horizontal asymptote. Now lastly, let's find our x and y intercepts. So our x-intercept is when y equals 0. So let's place f of x at 0 and start solving. Recognize if I multiply both sides by 2x plus 6, it's just going to cancel out. So realistically, I'm just asking myself, when does the numerator equal 0? So I'm going to add 24, divide by negative 10, and that gives me negative, I can simplify this. I'm going to put the negative on the top to negative 12 over 5, which again is negative 2.4. So we know when y is 0, x is negative 2.4. And then again, let's quickly find our y-intercept when x equals 0. So when x equals 0, negative 10 times 0 minus 24 over 2 times 0 plus 6. These guys are going to cancel because multiplying by 0 gives you 0. Then you're left with negative 24 over 6. And we know negative 24 divided by 6 gives us negative, oh, I'm having a quick brain fart here, negative 4. So that becomes negative 4, sorry, x at 0 and y at negative 4. Going a little too fast for myself. And now we can roughly graph since we have these two nice points. And again, you could find a few points here, but as for right now, we're going to leave it at that. I hope that made sense. Again, method 1 or method 2 both work. This is very useful to know because sometimes it can simplify certain questions, but it's also useful to know you could simply find it using some algebra. I hope that helped. Have a good day.